Hi, and welcome to our Worried About Nothing podcast. Today, we thought we would talk about tarot readings or psychic readings or other tools that people use to get spiritual guidance. My name's Kim.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Katya.
So we thought we'd talk about some of the tools people sometimes use to get spiritual guidance. Another method that sometimes is used is mediumship, trying to contact people that have passed for messages or to exchange information or ask questions. And so, what do you want to say about this?
Well, I can speak from my own experience, and I've had some readings done throughout the years. I remember one specifically, it must have been one of the first ones I had done, and she was some sort of medium, but the idea wasn't to contact anybody who had passed on. She did like a psychic reading for me. She was telling me about my career and that I'd be working with, women and design and stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, kind of took what she had to say. It was at the point in my life, I think it was after college, and I was trying to figure out, I was like, all right, what am I doing? Because I'm not doing anything with my degree. And, that still, in my experience, hasn't really materialized in the way that I feel like she had expressed it. So I guess I just kind of want to say, for me, whenever I get that type of reading, even if it's an astrology reading, is like it can kind of take you in the not wrong direction, but it kind of puts something in my head and say, okay, this is going to happen. And instead of, being open to all of the events in life, you kind of start looking for markers that are in alignment, or maybe seeking out doing things that are in alignment with that vision that you've now been given from somebody else. So I don't know how helpful it really was for me. It just kind of puts more thoughts in my head and clutters my mind up with things rather than just allowing life to be what it is and, coming upon things naturally, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that can be one of the dangers for sure, in that it can give you an end goal, and then all your attention is focused on that end goal because you think, well, that's definitely what's going to happen, without taking into account life and timeline changes and free will and all of these different things, and it's funny because before starting to study with Aratima, I studied a bit of tarot, so I could do some tarot reading. I did some psychic readings, that kind of thing. And I knew quite a lot of tarot readers and psychic readers and various other types of readers in London and the UK at the time. And it was really interesting for a number of reasons, because I found, and a lot of them found as well, that people would come to them and to us to get the answers they wanted, as opposed to actually find out what the future held. So I'd say maybe 90% of the reading requests were about relationships. And the question would be, am I going to meet my soulmate? Or am I going to meet my twin flame? Those kind of terminologies that are used, are sort of thrown around so much these days. And it was almost like the person would often try and manipulate you into giving the answer that they wanted to hear. So it would be, am I going to meet my twin flame? And you'd do the reading. And it would be, well, no. They'd be like, well, do it again, or that can't be right. So what about if this happens? Or how qualified are you? Or are you sure? It could never be that the answer was right and they had to accept it. It was, no, it's all your fault kind of thing. And with some people that I knew that did readings, it's not that they pandered to the person necessarily, but there would be a bit of a slant to kind of make them feel positive that it would happen, but they'd always kind of throw in the caveat, but there's always free will. So it's almost like they could say anything they wanted to a degree and go, but it's free will, so you can't hold me accountable, kind of thing. And I found that all a bit icky, actually. It was just a little bit so I didn't enjoy that, because I used to sometimes do sessions, so it'd be not just the one reading, so it'd be a group of readings. And at the time, energy healing, I thought that I knew how to do that, which I, since meeting Aratima, it's very much changed. My opinion of that's very much changed. But I'd get so drained by it, because it would usually be people who'd just broken up with their partner or were looking to meet somebody else or something like that, who just wanted me to confirm that their partner was madly in love with them and would definitely come back to them and would realize the error of their ways and all of these kind of things. So it was very much a reinforcing of a stuckness to an extent, and sometimes it would be people that wanted confirmation that they weren't alone, they weren't going to die alone, they weren't, lonely, they would get their vision of life, so it was always about getting something that they wanted. So it was a tool that was used instead of to open the pathway to more clarity. It was a tool to kind of, like you said, Danielle, to kind of stamp that this is what's going to happen story on it that they would then hold on to. And because they were holding on to it so tightly, there was no possibility of any other outcome, any other path divergence along the way, or any other possibility of something even better coming along. So I really didn't like that. I didn't do it for very long.
I actually used spiritual cards at some point. And overall, I would say they were useful depending which cards you use. I mean, I remember there was those called Osho spiritual cards, and a lot of them were actually targeting your ego. And by community, they were considered scary type of cards, that they might not give you a nice message. And I actually liked it because in a way, even though I'm no longer using them and I don't see them very useful for myself, but actually it's a daily reminder, whatever card you pick, that you have ego and there is something to work on. So from that perspective, if you need a reminder, if there's something that you need to get back into your center, into your heart, and you need a little guidance, you need a little help, and if that cards can help you in that way, well, why not, right? As long as you're not afraid to get the message that might not be nice or something that you're looking forward to, or how good you are, how amazing you are. And today is your day. That's what I noticed with a lot of cards actually, is, I don't know, you take some angel cards or whatever cards you take, and it was like, today's the magical day, or, this will happen. You're so brilliant. Oh, you are just, I don't know, there's all sorts of things to pamper you and to make you feel good about yourself. And again, if you look at it not from the point of, oh yeah, that's me, but from the point of view that it might help you in any way to connect to spirituality, then yeah, I don't see anything bad with them. Although, as I've learned over the years, it's always better for me, it's always a direct knowing. So listening to my direct knowing is much more accurate than listening to any cards or just even going for those readers. And actually, I remember listening to one of the lady from astrology. I joined her YouTube channel and she was doing some of the card readings. And this is when I realized and found Jason's channel, Jason Gallant channel. If any of our listeners are interested, we can post a link below. If you want to check him out, he's doing mantras and meditation. But when I listened to this lady, I realized how fake she was, because she would always put some makeup, she would always smile, and it had to be always nice. And it had to be certain ideas so that people like her and more people go and click on her. And at some point I realized, hey, this just looks fake. You do not look good today. There's no need to smile. It does not come natural. Stop doing it. And then the moment I met Jason, I was like, he's real. This lady is not. I instantly unsubscribed from her. So that was my experience with tarot card.
I think what you said is very true, in that it's very much perspective, and what angle you're coming from. So you have the maturity to, look at the cards, whatever card you might have picked, and saying, this is to help me with my ego, instead of, taking the message at surface value, things like, all your waiting has paid off, you're now amazing, kind of thing, or whatever you've been hoping for years is going to happen, But I think that some people do have readings for reasons such as yours, but a lot of people take them on the surface value, and like you said with that woman that did the astrology readings, in my experience of knowing a fairly large number of people that did readings, a lot of it is like that. It's fake and it comes from ego, and they talk about being divinely guided and all of these things. And it's not, it's just them wanting to be powerful, or them wanting to know it all, or them wanting to know more than you do, or whatever reason that's not genuine. So when you meet somebody, like you say, like Jason, who is actually divinely guided, you immediately see the contrast, you see the difference, and go, okay, that's real, that's what it's about. It's not this, oh yes, well, I'm going to say something that's so vague that you can interpret it in any way you want to, and then go, oh, it's amazing, how did you know? Kind of thing. I think those kind of things, tarot cards and other forms of reading, have their place, but I mean, in some ways they're an introduction to spirituality or the spiritual world, or an opening up for people that there's a power outside of themselves, and all of these things can be very good. But I feel that they need to be also taken with an openness or a lack of desperation, because people holding on to something just is another weight. It's just another stone kind of dragging you down, So holding on to the outcome of a reading can be very damaging. I mean, I know one person I used to know years ago, and she used to go for readings all the time, several times a month. And it was always about finding a love. She really wanted to find a new partner. And all these readers would say different things. And she would just pick the one that she liked the sound of the most, or the one that was the most close to what she wanted to happen. And she'd hold on to it. And she'd always push the reader into giving dates. So it'd be like, by the 12th of December, 2021, you're going to meet whatever. It would get to that date. And she'd be expecting to meet this person magically without doing anything, and it was just very damaging to her life, because she just wasn't living it. She was just holding on to these readings, using them as stepping stones to get to the next point, and the next hope, and then the next disappointment, and then the next expectation, and the next disappointment. So it can be very restricting if they're used in that way, I think.
I can see that.
Yeah.
As a kid, I remember at some point we got together and we decided to call for spirits. It was, of course, an older kid who decided to get everyone in. I was like, okay, we're going to offer some chocolate. And I don't even remember how, but we were calling for some dead spirits. I was young. I thought it was pretty cool and like spooky, and let's see what happens. Now I understand that I wouldn't do that. But, when you're young and you're kids, you just want to have fun. And then she put some chocolate, and I think we didn't have to look. We had to close our eyes. And at some point we saw some teeth on the chocolate. Although I'm not sure if she did it and she told everyone to close their eyes, so it's actually happened, but it felt, I don't know, it felt like something was happening. It felt like it was real, but I don't know how real it was. So anyway, not something I would play with nowadays.
Yeah. But it's one of those things you do in your kids. I did similar things. We did kind of Ouija boards and all that sort of stuff, and summoning people's grandmothers. And even at the time, I remember that it felt very real, in that it wasn't just playing around. And I remember, some of the other kids would carry on going, oh, this is great fun. And I just didn't do it very long. It was just like, nope, I'm leaving this room. It feels really strange in here now, because I believe all of that can happen, So with mediumship, for example, I do believe that genuinely there can be some contact with spirits who are still hanging around, though a lot of it is fraudulent, I think. But it's that holding on again, if you're wanting to contact people who've passed on, you're holding on to them, and you're not moving on with your life. You're not letting go of that person, which I know is hard, but it doesn't help you in the here and now, But it's not my place to judge. I know that when people are grief-stricken, they want to have any kind of comfort. I do understand that. In case I sound like a complete bitch.
I definitely think you're right, though. It's usually emotions like desperation or grief of some kind that drives people to seek these things out, for the most part. At least in my experience, that's why I would seek it out, is like, oh, I'm in some sort of bad way, or maybe a dissolution, right? All this negative stuff is coming up, or perceived negative stuff is coming up. So why is this happening? Do I need to worry about this? And the mind, then it's like, I need an answer, or go find something for that answer. And yeah, seeking something out, whether it be, a deck of cards that I had and pulling one for myself, or, maybe seeking out a reading from someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess, they're tools, and like any other tools, it's how they're used, isn't it, that makes them what they are. So, if you use a reading just for what it is, just a reading of a snapshot of what things look like to somebody right here, right now, then great. But if you use a reading as, the Bible, or, the history of your life, then things change all the time. So it just freezes you at that point, because it can be fun, sometimes when I remember I don't do it anymore, but I used to have some of those oracle cards, different ones, and I'd pull one every day, and it'd be like, oh yeah, today's my hummingbird day or something, whatever it was. And it was kind of fun. But then sometimes it can be, I used to have a friend who I used to pull these cards with sometimes, and she'd just keep pulling cards till she got the answer she wanted. So it was like, nope, not hummingbird today. Nope, not wolf, not whatever. Oh yes, okay, today is my cat day, that's a trivial example. But so that's kind of manipulating the cards to go through the entire pack till you get to the one that you want,
Yeah, I remember I did something like that too. I would pick a card. I was like, that doesn't sound right. No, there must have. And then I would find millions of excuses why it's not right. I was like, oh, probably something with my hand, or it just got stuck, or I didn't pick it right, or I didn't mix it right.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's millions of excuses. Like, no, I have to try again. Okay, let me bring it next to my heart and let's see what my heart wants. And then let's hold it. Okay, it's warm. Okay, it's nice. So let's try it now. Now the cards are clean. They're probably the past message, yesterday's day. So now I'll pull it out. Oh, and that's the true message.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't tap it 3 times. You have to tap it 3 times on your heart, turn it round 5 times, hop on one leg around the room. That's it. And I forgot the step of washing my hands 24 seconds, and it's just...
Exactly. Exactly.
I know. Surrounded by just discarded cards, the last one on the deck. You're like, yes, that's the one. Yeah, I was right the 64th time. Yes, 64th time lucky.
I just needed to stand on my head.
Yeah. In a westerly wind, while the sun was shining on my right side.
And meditating on the left.
Yeah. So funny. I know some of the things. Oh God. Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah. But that's the thing, it can become that much of a sort of superstition and kind of, in manipulation when you think you're asking for higher guidance purely, but you're basically asking yourself to, for your guidance, the thing that you want to hear. So it's like, right, I'm just going to manipulate God. He won't know and he'll tell me what I want to know, It's funny.
Yeah, it looks like, to me, a trust issue. I mean, I can't say that I've never done that, obviously wanting the answer that you want to get. But it seems like, from just listening to what you guys were describing, a real issue with trust, right? You're jumping through all of these hoops to try to get the answer that you want because you're so afraid of not getting whatever that answer is. It's just not trusting that whatever life's going to bring you is actually what's in proper alignment with you.
I think it's not really even being aware of what's proper alignment for you, in the sense of accepting that proper alignment is proper alignment. It's not what you want to be proper alignment, And I think it's just that deep desire that I think humanity has to be special or to be extraordinary or to be in some way different in a good way, because these cards and readings and various other things that are aimed towards giving, in inverted commas, spiritual guidance will often be along the lines of, you are the unique one, you are the most special one, today is your day because you're a magical creature of love, and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes people have that loneliness or that need to feel important. So sometimes readings or cards or what have you, whatever method it is, will give that to people. And it often gets so tied in with the person that's doing the readings. So I found that with me, when I was doing psychic readings and other kinds of readings before, very separate to my soul readings now, they're completely different. But back then, there would be this very strong attachment to me. So I would do a reading for somebody, and because I was not in the same kind of objective state, when I do soul readings now, it's very objective and from a wide perspective. Whereas when I used to do readings before I met Aratima, when life was different, it would be very focused on the person, on them, on a very personal level, if that makes sense. So because I was doing a personal reading on a personal level for somebody about something very personal, they would attach to the reading and then attach to me. And it got kind of unpleasant after a while because they would just constantly be with me then, sort of sucking out energy of whatever it is. And I saw that with other people that did readings and did courses about that kind of thing. And it was like the students became acolytes rather than being open to studying what it was that was being taught. It was a massive adoration for the teacher in a very unhealthy way. And some of the people I knew that were teaching loved it. That's the reason they did it, was to lap up that kind of adulation and that kind of ego boosting, oh, you're amazing, you're the best teacher in the world kind of thing. Not at all like Aratima. She's completely not like that. But I feel a lot of people that I knew back then used to believe that, being able to see things or be psychic was a gift, and that made them special. And even then I wasn't very comfortable with that, but now I'm even more so, because as far as I'm aware, everyone can see things. As far as I'm concerned, everyone can see things, and it's not a special thing. It just means that you're seeing things. It's not kind of, it doesn't make you kind of the wizard with the top hat going, right, I'm going to direct your life now kind of thing. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but
It does. And at some point, I guess we can all see, I still can't see things, but I have direct knowing that I'm trusting. So it doesn't matter what kind of way it is. And I also wanted to add with tarot card that they're actually very limiting. So if you're looking for the divine guidance, well, it's only limited to the deck of cards that is in front of you. So you can never receive a full divine guidance, because what if the card is not there? What if the guidance is not there? It's much better to learn to listen to your heart and to direct and know exactly what you need to do at that moment than rely on, I don't know, there's lots of things. I remember looking into one of those pendulums. What are they called?
pendulums. Yeah.
Pendulums.
Yeah.
And also getting yes and no. And then again, it would be the same thing. I would be attaching to the outcome. So instead of doing that and waiting when things will happen, or whether they'll happen or not, it's just so much better to just, as I said before, just be here and listen to what your heart will tell you.
Yeah, and to do that moment to moment as well, to listen to what's true right now in this moment, as opposed to what is the next 10 years going to be laid out for me as, because you can't know. So it's just listening, like you said, Katya, it's listening to the guidance, listening to your heart, listening to truth, and being open to that for now. What's this moment telling me? What's true for now? Not, okay, so in 30 years, I'm going to have 2 children with blue eyes. And yes, I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to make those sperm work hard. It's just... You can't do that. Because, with the tarot cards, there are some rules and regulations to them. So there's the structure and there's a pattern, it's in some ways it makes sense. But at the same time, there's a real adherence to it. So it's, if you get one card, for example, the next step for you is definitely going to be this, and to me, that's not true, because nothing follows that strict a pattern, So yes, things have seasons. Yes, things, change. Yes, things can be circular in movement, so birth, death, rebirth, death, that happens. But it doesn't mean that once you're in a certain stage, within the tarot cards, it's kind of, well, you journey from this card to the next card, then the next card, then the next card. It's basically the Fool, which is the number 0, journeys through the tarot cards, and he follows the pattern, the circle round. But it doesn't necessarily make sense to me in that linear fashion. So, for example, one of the cards is the Hermit, and that's a time of introspection and a time of going inwards, growth, meditation, that kind of thing. And yes, that happens, but it doesn't necessarily follow that it happens at a certain period. It happens when it happens, so it doesn't mean after that time you'll then come out and you'll move definitively into the next card, because that holds too much restriction. That's too prescriptive a pattern for me. Sorry?
I wanted to say constriction.
Yes, constrictive too. Yeah, so very prescriptive and very constrictive, that it then puts expectation that then this is going to happen, and then that will happen, and that will happen. And that sort of leaves you on a pretty narrow channel, to me, it feels like. Whereas if, as you were saying, Katya, if you listen to your heart and you follow your heart's guidance and you follow truth and you're open to God's truth moving through you, then anything can change. So, you can jump timelines, you can drop things, you can release things, you can, so much miracles happen in this space, so if you're following that prescriptive road, you're not allowing for the miracle zone. You're not allowing for anything that's beyond your understanding to happen. And that's the place that I want to live in. I want to live in that space of trust and allowing God's will to move through me, and then anything can happen. and I have no control over it, and that's great. Because why would I want to try and control something with my teeny tiny human mind, when everything and anything is possible? And I don't need to have a step-by-step formula for that. I don't want one either. I would rather just be in trust in every moment, and then just accept what happens, and sometimes there'll be delight, sometimes there'll be, oh, okay, but either way, it leaves it just, there's no barriers then, it's just open. And then that's to me, that's a more enjoyable or better or freer way to live.
And talking about miracles, I mean, I don't know, that's not a miracle, but at some point we wanted to sell our place and we had, the sale sign. No, we're not selling our place, but the neighbor contacted and was like, hey, I have a buyer for your place. There is no fees to pay and anything. It didn't feel right to me. I'm actually start really loving my place. And I don't want to sell it, so I'm not in that position. But it's just from that point of view that if things meant to happen, or if there is another place, of course, I'll be open to that. But there was nothing that I would want to kind of switch it for. But it's just the whole idea that sometimes if you need to sell, even if you don't have a sale sign, you might get a buyer without even doing anything. So that's just talking about being open to the miracles. In that sense, it is a miracle because, we're not really selling.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it reminds me of that post that you posted, Katya, which I loved, was when you were talking about how abundance is having an open heart, and you were talking about how on your way back from the retreat, suddenly all these things kept flowing in, and that's it. It's being in that lovely, expansive, open heart space where it just flows through. It's beautiful. Yeah.
And especially when you're not expecting it and you just don't care, really. And then it's like, oh, that's a nice surprise. Oh, wow, where did that come from? Oh, I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the gift of the island. I didn't know that I wanted one, but yeah, that's a really good example, I felt, of being in that openness rather than the constriction. Yeah.
I think sometimes that's the challenge for people, though, is making that shift into the openness from their place of constriction. That's what I've found, at least, even recently. It's just, I guess, trust, being able to trust more. And, I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is that I'm afraid of. I mean, I kind of know, I suppose, because there's these thoughts of, not doing what would possibly be the highest thing to do, and then somehow not moving forward in the best way that I could because of that. But it's just really, it becomes a prison in and of itself, because then it's just kind of becomes paralyzing over like, well, I don't feel like I'm getting guidance on exactly what thing I should do. And then it makes things more difficult. But I was just thinking in terms of, because you guys are talking about, operating from a place of being in your heart, following truth, knowing what you know. And then there are people who it just doesn't come easily to them. They don't know what they're sensing, where it's coming from, what they're following. Is this my heart? I want it, so maybe it is, and falling into those kind of traps. And it's like, well, your head probably thinks it's a good idea, but is it really what's in alignment with you? So just throwing that out there, because I know it's been my experience even recently that it's just sometimes it doesn't feel very clear.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point. I'm sure it will help some of our listeners, what you just described. So I'm sure it's not that easy to be in your heart unless you know that place, right? So what I also wanted to say that in the past, I never really spent a lot of time through the guidance, and maybe that's just me being a bad student. But if I don't know what to do, I'll just pick something. And if I make a mistake, then I made a mistake. Who cares?
Yeah, for me at least, it's the not knowing what those ripples might be. So you don't know how different of a situation, because the domino effect can get quite great, and it's just like you'll never know. Which is fine, but that's the thing with making even small decisions sometimes for myself, is that I'm like, I don't know you know, it's making the wrong decision. I was like, I really feel like it can have a much larger impact. I mean, I guess I've seen it in my life, certain things that I've decided to do, and I was like, oh, it won't be that big of a deal. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that had like long lasting and far reaching repercussions that I didn't even think about being possible. It's like doing something can really take you off in a direction where you're just kind of on a different path, for a long time. You're wrapped up in something else. And then it's kind of like, well, sure, there's learning in that and stuff, but it's like, well, I don't know. Just at the same time, not necessary. There's learning about free will in it, but it's kind of like having clarity on something, at least in certain instances, and choosing something that isn't the right thing.
I know what you're saying, absolutely. But I feel for me that there really is no such thing as a wrong decision, in that every decision you make is a decision you make, and it's your karma or your dharma or whatever it is. You don't even have to examine it well, maybe I should do more, but I don't. It just is a decision, and you make a decision, and then the consequence happens and you learn from it. And then you make the next decision and the consequence happens and you learn from it. So to me, it's not like there's a fork in the road and you take a decision and it takes you further away from the left fork. It's that it's all going upwards. So it doesn't matter which road you take, as long as you're open to learning and, following the truth as much as you can, it takes you to the next decision. And then it's a level of learning as opposed to a linear path. So even if you take the right fork, say, and then you take the next right fork and the next right fork and the next right fork, and you end up very, very right, it doesn't mean that you've abandoned any possibility of the left fork, because the left fork might be exactly the same in learning, just different in experiences. So, if you believe that everything is God and everything is, you're here for a reason, then the reason might be that you need to learn this lesson and that lesson and that lesson. So whatever experiences you might have from choices you've made, those decisions or those opportunities will be presented to you to learn something or not learn something. And if you learn something, then that will change things. And if you don't learn something, the lesson will repeat until you do learn it. And neither of those is bad. It's just everyone does things in their own time and their own awareness in every moment and every choice that's given and the karmas they have and all of that stuff. So it's not about this is good and that is bad to me. It's just, it's all a learning. It's like a school, you learn at your own pace. You learn, some things are easier to learn, some things are harder, some things you like learning, some things you really, 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 really hate learning, some things you never learn, algebra, blah, or whatever. But it's just all about the experience of it. So in that way, it's great. There's a situation at the moment with work where I'm able to see a lesson that I haven't learned fully in past jobs. So it's come back in this job because I haven't learned it yet. And it's great, because I was just thinking the other day how grateful I was for the fact that it's come up again, because I knew at the last job I hadn't fully learned it properly. And I was like, okay, it's going to come up again. I know it will. It has. It's like, okay, this time I better, crack it or whatever. But I feel that's the way it goes, because if you're looking at it from the perspective of, eternity and oneness, it's like, well, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to learn something, because you've got this lifetime, next lifetime, the next 100 lifetimes. It's choice. It's always choosing. So, taking the pressure off oneself to be a good student or learn it in this amount of time or whatever it is, because that, I feel, can be a block in itself. It's just pace yourself. It's great. You're learning, you're seeing, you're observing, you're becoming more aware. Brilliant. The sun's shining, so it's
And I wanted to add that otherwise you're afraid to leave. You're afraid to leave every day because you're just afraid to make the wrong decision. Then why do you want to live in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably not the right terminology that I wanted to use, but I just feel like otherwise you're being stuck and just being afraid of the next decision. That's how I feel, but obviously not in an offensive way.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, there's truth in there, definitely. And I feel that the fear could often be so subconscious that, when we're stuck like that, when we don't necessarily know that that's why we're stuck. But absolutely, I feel that's so true. It's being afraid to live. So stopping yourself from living in one way or the other, rather than just going, okay, living's really messy. It kind of gets ugly. You scrape your knees, you're going to fall over so many times. But that's what living's about, I guess, for that experience, rather than doing everything perfectly the first time. It's like, okay, I'm going to be really bad at doing this maybe 1,000 times. Maybe by the 1,001st time, I might kind of be better, not in a comparison sense, but just in the sort of allowing yourself that freedom to just mess up over and over and over and over and over again. I find that there can be a lot of joy in that, because it takes the pressure off. You don't go, right, I've got to do this perfectly. You just go, I know I'm going to get this wrong. Great, let's play with it, to some extent. But with the, going back to the topic of tarot cards and readings, I feel that if people are feeling really isolated or disconnected or alone or lonely, and a reading is some way like a lifeline that pulls you back and kind of helps you to remember that you're connected, or there's a connection there, even if you're connecting with the person doing the reading, that is a good thing, because anything that takes people out of feeling lost and alone or reminds them they're not is a good thing. Because that was another thing, another side of when I used to do readings. It wasn't all bad. Some of it was just allowing somebody to feel loved, even if it was just for a moment, was very important to them and very beautiful for me. So it wasn't so much necessarily about the reading, it was about the connection. Because sometimes people do want just to know that there's nothing wrong with them, or know that they're not alone. Because people can sometimes find themselves drifting on a sea of this loneliness where they forget that they're loved. And that was a lovely thing. I was happy to make those connections when they happened.
Yeah, I can see that. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
There has to be some use from the tool.
Yeah.
It has to be, it can't be all bad. So there is obviously some positive moments as well. So that's beautiful.
Yeah. Because I guess that's all that a lot of people are seeking for, people that maybe at the beginning of their spiritual journey or further in, it's all about connection, so whatever road or tool you use to get there, it can't be all bad, it can be good. Absolutely.
It's true too, because they're all tools. So it depends on how you use it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. A tool is just a tool. A spade digs the earth or smacks somebody over the head would kill them.
Right.
Yeah. So that was our conversation on using tools for spiritual guidance. Thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe and share with all your friends. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, please press the bell button to be notified of our future podcasts. Thanks for listening.